We were tracking for you at this hour. Hello and welcome to Startup Street. I'm Megha Vishwanath and with me is my colleague Mugdha Warrior. Now, Indian SaaS companies have evolved from a few upstarts in 2010 to a multi-billion-dollar industry today. In fact, SaaS companies founded by Indian entrepreneurs are poised to reach between $18 to $20 billion in revenue, with the potential to capture a 7 to 9% share of the global SaaS market by 2022. This, according to the India SaaS Report 2020 released by Bain & Company today. It is interesting to note that just in the last 5 years, the number of funded SaaS companies has more than doubled, and the number of SaaS companies drawing in Series C or later stage has quadrupled. Joining me right now to talk more about the findings of the report is Aditya Shukla, partner Bain Company and co-author of this report. Aditya, thank you so much for being with us on Startup Street. Now, one of the top takeaways from this report has been that SaaS companies accounted for 20% of total venture capital and growth equity investments in H1 2022. Clearly a very prominent theme for the Indian ecosystem, even through COVID-19. Talk to us about what does this indicate, and also any early estimates of what H2 traction looks like?
Hey, Megha, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. So, no, absolutely. As you said, I would say the Indian SaaS ecosystem is on the cusp of a big transformation. We've seen a lot of tailwinds over the last couple of years, and 2020, in fact, has been an absolutely phenomenal year, both from an investment standpoint into SaaS companies, as well as from the standpoint of many of these SaaS companies seeing exponential growth. COVID actually has not really been a headwind for many of these companies, right? A lot of these companies are either focused on, horizontal business applications or horizontal infra. You have a lot of emerging tech companies, new category creators that have emerged from the Indian SaaS ecosystems, and many of those companies continue to thrive and do very well. So overall, this year, as I said, has been an excellent year for SaaS companies. H2 is still playing out in terms of contribution of SaaS companies to total venture capital and growth equity investments. Our sense is that it will increase, even further, because there have been some big deals that have taken place over the last couple of months. In all, in summary, I would just say it's a sector that has been on the cusp of transformation for the last 3 or 4 years, and I would say 2020 has been the breakout year for Indian SaaS.
Absolutely, and I believe that this trend will continue. Of course, your report points out the first group of Indian SaaS companies, were the horizontal players like Zoho and Freshworks, and now you have gone ahead and identified that there are different areas that new age SaaS companies are focusing on, be it size of customer, type of solution, and even geography of focus. But can you also tell us, what the future SaaS companies would look like? Would it be more niche, or would it continue following some of the patterns that you have been able to highlight through this report?
Sure. So I think it's a great question, Megha, and I think you can look at it in 2 different ways. One is you can see what kind of SaaS company archetypes will continue to remain salient or will become increasingly salient in the future. And the second is within SaaS companies, what product categories, what kind of SaaS companies will become more important in the future. And I would say broadly, we believe that there are 4 key SaaS company archetypes that will become more salient in the future. One, your SMB-focused SaaS companies that are more horizontal in nature. Freshworks and Zoho obviously started that trend and have really scaled to reach meaningful sizes. That category will continue. Within that, companies will end up doing different things. You have a lot of SaaS companies that are focused on no-code or low-code platforms. So those will continue. The second category really will be vertical-specific SaaS companies. Now, this is something that didn't really exist earlier, but over time, what you are seeing is that a bunch of these SaaS entrepreneurs have identified verticals that are either using legacy or manual solutions and have developed a SaaS, an elegant SaaS solution to replace those systems. So those continue, right? Companies like, if I were to name a couple, companies like Innovator will continue. And the third one I would say is the globally competitive firms in emerging tech, which are companies like a Postman, like a Hasura, that are almost creating categories of their own.
Okay. We're a little pressed for time here, so I'll quickly like to ask you. I started by saying a forecast that your report makes for 2022, which is the fact that Indian SaaS companies would capture a 7 to 9% share of the global market. Can you talk to us about what kind of competitive advantages do Indian SaaS companies have over their global peers?
Sure. So I think, very quickly, a few of them I think are pretty stark in terms of advantages. One is that there is a depth and abundance of engineering talent that sits in the country. And a lot of these SaaS companies are leveraging that. Two, generally Indian SaaS companies will enjoy a low-cost structure. And the entrepreneurs running these companies have a fairly frugal mindset in the sense that they are more focused on sustainable growth. SaaS companies in general, as you would know, tend to have higher gross margins. But a lot of these companies are very focused on sustainably growing. The third really is effective customer service. In our work with these SaaS companies, it's pretty clear that effective customer service is one of the clear differentiators for Indian SaaS companies. The fourth, I would say, is that, look, new categories are being created by Indian SaaS companies. If you look at a browser stack, look at a Postman, look at a Hasura. So those are, again, advantages riding on the back of DevOps or riding on the back of API markets. Those, I would say, are some of the key tailwinds that differentiate Indian SaaS companies from their global counterparts.
Okay. All right, Aditya, thank you so much for sharing those details with us and joining us right here on Startup Street. With that, we'll have to move to a big update that's actually coming in, and this is about Rivigo. Now, Warburg Pincus, via its Mauritius investment entity, Spring Cantor, is planning to acquire additional shareholding in logistics unicorn Rivigo Services. Now, India's competition watchdog, CCI, has approved this additional shareholding, according to a release by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Warburg Pincus and Elevation Capital, which was formerly known as CEF Partners, are the key investors in the logistics startup based out of Gurugram. Now, as per Crunchbase data, Rivigo has so far raised a total of $268.7 million via multiple equity and debt funding since its inception in 2014. Data sourced from Ntracker shows that for the year ending March 2020, the surface logistics startup had reported a 42% increase in revenue to 1,028 crore rupees in FY19 with a net loss of 600 crore rupees. Now, according to its official website, Rivigo has over 5,000 high truck fleet operational across 4,000 Indian cities with over 2 lakh verified fleet owners. The company operates via more than 70 pit stops and completed 500,000 trips to date. Joining me right now to talk about what this means for this space and what can we make from this little information that we have as of now is Siddharth Pai, founding partner of 314 Capital and co-chair Regulatory Affairs Committee, IVCA. Siddharth, thank you so much for speaking to us on Startup Street. Quickly, whatever information has been put out so far, what does this mean? If you can talk to us about, does this seem like a full-blown buyout, or does it seem like a first step in that direction? Why else was Warburg Pincus reach out to the regulator at this point?
So I think based on the information that's actually available, it would be a little premature to actually decide whether this is a full-blown acquisition of Rivigo by entities controlled by Warburg Pincus. So this can actually be construed as a first step towards the acquisition of the company as well. But we'll, of course, have to wait for the company and its investors to make a formal announcement for the same. The CCI report seems to indicate that this is primarily for an investment into the company as opposed to a secondary acquisition of all the other shares. One of the reasons why this possibly could have happened is because Warburg Pincus has been a very active investor in the logistics space. And we actually look at the Competition Act of 2002, the moment you are actually a major investor in any allied industry and you are actually making an acquisition above a certain value, it's actually prudent for you to actually get this particular CCI approval. So I think it's a matter of abundant caution that Warburg, given its varied investments in logistics space, has actually reached out to CCI for the approval, and they've also obtained the same from them.
Well, that could be a possible explanation for this, and also the fact that Warburg has been very bullish on India's B2B logistics space. Their other investment, of course, includes Ecom Express. But again, what is this step? What can we make of this step? Are they looking to further move into this direction? And logistics seems to be a sector that they are deeply invested in when it comes to the Indian region.
So it would seem so, because even the CCI order actually states that they're given approval to tranche 1, and there's another tranche 2 that they can possibly make itself. I think Warburg has been very bullish on logistics for a long time, and logistics being 14% of India's GDP, it obviously is bound to actually come down, and Warburg actually wants to become an active player in the entire scene. So I think this is a testament to their bullishness on that entire sector. And this could possibly indicate that maybe sometime in the future, there could actually be a merger and acquisition play amongst various other entities that Warburg has, or with any of the larger logistics players itself. Logistics has been a hot space along with e-commerce in India. I think it is a space that all of us need to look on. And it is actually ripe for a consolidation as well.
Okay, all right, Siddharth, thank you so much for joining us and sharing those details. I'd just like to quickly recap that Warburg Pincus, via its Mauritius investment entity, is acquiring additional shareholding in logistics player Rivigo. And again, I would like to point out that CNBC TV 18 has reached out to Warburg Pincus, CEF Partners and Rivigo, and we are yet to hear official statements from the companies and the investors. It's a developing story. We'll be bringing you all the updates right here on CNBC TV 18 Startup Street. With that, we'll have to slip into a quick break, but up next on the hot seat, Yashish Dahiya of Policy Bazaar tells us about the company's newly launched vertical. What is it about? Find out on the other side. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Startup Street. Now, online insurance marketplace Policy Bazaar has launched a new vertical for customers to buy job loss or income loss insurance. Apart from that, the company is also in the middle of raising a new round of funding at a higher valuation. To discuss all of this, we have with us Yashish Dahiya, Group CEO of PolicyBazaar.com. Yashish, welcome on the show. Firstly, let's talk about this new vertical that you've launched, where you're now offering job loss insurance, and that too as a standalone product. Was there a big demand for this, especially given the massive job losses that we saw during the pandemic? Is this what the insurance companies are responding to?
So we've got 5 insurance companies who have offered this product on our platform, and it's available to people. And the reason for this is very clear. During this pandemic, due to various diseases, due to various illness, if somebody has a job loss, and that can continue for some time. So, up to 1 lakh rupees per week, a customer can, which is very good, right? Most people don't have any 1 lakh rupees per month. So it has got quite a high coverage, and up to 100 weeks, it can provide a coverage, which is almost 2 years. So it is a significant coverage available to consumers. And I believe there should be a need for this. Ever since we were very young, as we grew up, people always wanted a government job so they could have security, they could have some pension, they could have some of those things. And, they wouldn't just lose their job. In the private side, that happens quite often.
This is definitely a much needed... That's right.
Yes.
Yashish, like you said, it's definitely a much needed product. But do you think it could have come a little earlier? Because right now, from what we understand, the data shows that the unemployment levels are now stabilizing far lower than what we saw, a few months ago. But do you see the kind of traction that for the product continuing? And do you see this as a temporary kind of a vertical or a product? Or do you see it as a permanent product on your platform?
We can never change. No, this is hopefully it will be a permanent product. We take great effort in working with companies to make sure the products we launch on our platform are such companies are able to make profits on them and not just make losses. They are not handouts or giveaways. They are meaningful products that make sense for both the consumer and the supplier. So historically, we've never launched a product which has been so loss-making for insurers that they had to pull off for the product on our website. That's never happened. So going by history, we have some experience there. And this ought to be a permanent product. It is not a one-time product or a one-time activity. We can't change what we did 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
So I cannot answer for why this product wasn't launched in the past, but now it is launched. And my view is people should not buy the product when they need it, when they know that 6 months from now I'm going to lose my job. That is not the point. The point is you buy it. Every private job, people can lose their job sometime. And that is why this coverage is there.
No, absolutely. I mean, we have just realized the uncertainty of everything in the last few months. So definitely a good product. moving on to your funding, Yashish, we understand that you're in the process of raising a new round of funding at a valuation of $2 billion, which is higher than what you were valued at last time. Could you share a little more details, and also how much of the primary capital is coming in through this round?
There will be about $50 to $100 million of primary capital coming in. Please understand, we already have a lot of cash in the company, so our objective was not to raise capital. Our objective was to accommodate a particular shareholder so that our operations in the UAE could get more alignment with the government operations there. So this is an investment coming in through the ADQ, which is the Abu Dhabi people. And our primary reason for taking the investment is because we have a new venture in the UAE, and we want to make sure that we have the government there as partners in our venture, so that they are part of the success of the venture. That is the reason. And I think I don't comment on whether our value is high or low. Yes, it is going to be $2 billion, but we historically have never really raised for money. I think we could get a higher valuation if we wanted to just get a higher valuation. There are many who can pay us a higher valuation.
No, absolutely. I understand. Policybazaar has been in the game for a long time, but you're confirming that it's a $2 billion valuation. This is a strategic kind of an investment, like you said, for your expansion plans. We also understand that there's a secondary transaction involving your existing investor, True North. Has that been completed?
That was completed about a month ago. So because on the primary, we have 12 institutional investors. So on any primary deal, it takes a lot of, you can imagine, right? There are 12 sets of lawyers, and our lawyers, and the investors' lawyers. So it's always a complicated process getting a primary thing completed in our company. But the secondary is between two parties, really. And so that could happen much faster. So the secondary got completed about a month ago. The primary will get completed, hopefully, at some point. We always take about 6 months. Hopefully this time we'll take shorter.
Okay, shorter than 6 months. Yashish, moving back to your policies away from the funding, if you can tell us what has the traction been in the last couple of months for your COVID policies, especially with the news of the vaccine and their efficacy now coming out. Is the demand for your COVID insurance policies kind of coming down from what the peak that it had reached earlier?
No, we were never very big on COVID policies. We were always big on the base health insurance and the base life insurance plans. We are not a believer that you should buy a policy for 3 months or 6 months. That is not our philosophy. And the demand for both the health insurance and life insurance continues and is strong. Of course, it is not where it was in July, but I don't think it has any. The people who buy these policies buy them for 30 years, 50 years, for a lifetime. It is meant to be covering against any death, any disease over the next, so many years. So I think those are serious policies.
Right.
I'm not saying the COVID ones are not serious, but that is not a very large part. That was never more than 0.5% of our premium ever.
Right. The more long term. Okay. Lastly, Yashish, let's talk about how you look to close FY21. Policybazaar definitely has seen a big growth year on year, but Paisabazaar has been impacted by the pandemic. How do you expect to close FY21? Will you return to profitability this fiscal year?
No, we will not be profitable this year. We will make losses of about $5 million. Of course, if I include investment income, we will be profitable. But on operational revenues, as a whole group, we will make about $5 million of losses. Please appreciate about 10 million of this comes from Paisabazaar, maybe a little more than 10 million. And we have also started a new vertical in the UAE, which will give us some losses. But overall, Policybazaar standalone is profitable, but just about profitable.
All right. So not profitable this year, hopefully next year. Yashish, thank you so much for joining us. But with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of Startup Street. Many thanks for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18.